Ouais, vous m'entendez? Je sais pas si ça marche. Si. On va recommencer cet après-midi. Donc nous allons écouter nos amis belges pour deux présentations. Et après, je vous annoncerai les groupes. Nous aurons des petites séances photos et puis nous reprendrons les thématiques avec les groupes français. Voilà, et on vous expliquera les maquettes aussi. Ok, thank you.
So hello everyone, we are going to present you the landscape approach made by Alexandra de Jager, Céline Penick, who is not present today, and by myself, Lisa Muxek. So during our analysis, we noticed very quickly that it's the presence of a contrast in the landscape of Thiers, that between the upper tone where we find the historical traces, the urban density, and also and especially a strongly marked relief in this in this part. So and that lower tone, which extend on the vast plain, including allotments and economics and industrial zones. So from the valley, we have taken several viewpoints which aim to represent the landscape of Thiers, like here, just there. So drawn by the density of vegetation and punctuated by dwellings. Yeah, as you can see here. And in the past, industries were developed on the edge of the river, La Durolle. So in the valley, and especially in the historic town, it's impossible to escape the narrow and very winding road. So it was important for us to mention the recurring materials in the landscape, namely the wooden half timbering, but above all considerable presence of plaster. Before moving on the opposite side of this landscape approach, I will of course discuss about the building that brings us together today, the Hospital of Thiers, so which was built in the upper part of the upper tone, just here, and you can see very quickly that imposing facade here is connected to the district and stands out in the contrast with the other facade because of its materiality in volvic stone, like the Cathedral of Clermont-Ferrand. Sorry.
On the other side, a plain sketches to the horizon. This is where industrial and commercial zones have developed. There are also allotments in which one can observe four-footed houses accompanied by a private garden and surrounded by a fence or a hedge. The building constructed on a plain use mostly the same materials as those developed by Gizem earlier, with the main difference being the sheet metals clothing in the commercial and industrial buildings. The layout is therefore more organized and controlled. At the natural level, it's mainly agricultural. The rural landscape is that of the bocage. The hospital is therefore linked these two types of landscape. Is it in a way at the confluence of these two types of landscape?
Okay. Thank you.
C'est muséographie, oui. Hello. So we have worked on the thematic of museography. It is an important thematic for a project because, as you know, we are going to make a cutlery museum. First, you can find on our poster different definitions. The definitions of museography, scenography, and museology. Museography is the art of making museums. The museograph is responsible of choosing the object and the artwork to expose. He makes a story of the museum. The scenography is the art to making an exposition. The scenograph is responsible of cheating the message of the exposition for the visitors. He makes the relationships between the expositions and the visitors. Museology is the science of museums. It is the study of the history of museums and all the knowledge in relation with museography. You can also find a sketch with the relationships between architects with the scenograph and the museograph, because it can take on test through works. Then you can find on our poster the thematic of the actual cutlery museum. They are three thematic. The museum part with the history of the knife and all the knife exposed. Then the workshop to allow people to understand the art of knife making. And finally, the Lyonnais spinning wheel.
For the third part, we studied through a timeline how showing objects in the museum evolved throughout the centuries. We also saw how the Cutlery Museum in Thiers inserts himself throughout this timeline. So during the Middle Ages, museums did not exist. All art pieces were in the possession of kings and the clergy. In 1694, the first public museum in France opened in Besançon. From there on out, a vulgarization process began to show museums to allow museums, to be more accessible to a larger public. So from museum of the 18th century, when the art was stacked in rooms with no explanations, to the early 21st century when laws were voted in France to make museums more accessible to a larger public, handicapped people included. We've come a very long way. Finally, we studied some characteristics that we deemed important of how to expose objects in museums. We studied how to use the lights to show objects. We also studied different ways of showing objects in a museum. We studied the different type of signs in museums and the different type of pathways. And we studied all the advantages and disadvantages. Can we change the slide, please? So this is the part I'm talking about. So we studied really a lot of different characteristics that we can find in museums with all their advantages and disadvantages, so we can have a better understanding of how to make a museum and how to make it accessible to a large number of people. And that's it for us. Thank you very much.
On passe au groupe, ouais.
Euh,
Bah, je te laisse le dire, non?
oui, je vais l'afficher.
Ouais.
Ouais.